There's a question regarding my positions on science, and particularly linguistics, that I think is very notable that nobody has ever asked me. And that is, well, there's kind of two versions of it. The generic version is, what happened, right? What did people do? What were your experiences that caused you to move away from being a blind disciple of science? Because once upon a time, I absolutely was. And kind of the more specific alternate version of this would be like, what was the last straw? And that more specific version is easier for me to answer. So that's what I'm gonna try to do here. Um, Kind of the general answer is that over a period of about a decade, like the early 2000s to about 2000, um, probably extended up to about 2016. Well, yeah, yeah, early-ish 2016, and then the last straw was later in 2016, I think. So, yeah. And this experience was it was predominantly focused around linguistics, right? So, I had my degree program, and all along, I'm wondering, what the hell are these guys talking about? Like, what are the initial assumptions that brought them to think about things this way? Like, I never, while I was in school, I never got a comprehension of what the hell was happening. It was in subsequent years when I, kind of carried on uh, my own studies on my own behalf, that I sort of figured things out. Which really isn't strange, because the reason that I came into linguistics in the first place is because it was something that I was extremely fascinated with since middle school, since fifth or sixth grade. Kind of just on my own independent, like by the time I was in seventh or eighth grade, I had gained enough information and knowledge on things that I could identify pretty much every extant writing system on the planet. And this was well before internet days. This was the 90s. Um, yeah. Through high school, that's kind of where the internet started to mature. That's when I started like uh, gaining like big texts in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of languages. And so by the time I got into college and I had switched my major from mathematics to linguistics, which was something that occurred over the course of a year, because nobody would give me a straight answer on what the hell I needed to do to change my major. So I came in as a math major, took on a whole bunch of courses that I didn't want to take. Didn't do so great on those because I didn't care. But at the same time, I had um, courses on Mayan archaeology and Dong and Mandarin Chinese, things like that. Yeah, I think I had three languages Spanish, Mandarin, and all of them. That first semester I was at the University of Arizona, and I found it pretty easy. Um, on top of the rest of the course load. And then let's see. So that was. I don't really remember how it all went together. But yeah, nobody would really give me a straight answer on how to change my major. So yeah, it wasn't until the next semester that I was able to start changing my major and start getting into more linguistics classes. Um, and I ended up graduating with a 4.0 in my major, which was linguistics. And my minor was Mandarin Chinese. I did all right in that. I didn't do fantastic. It was pretty intense. It was pretty intense. Plus, like, my primary goal was never to be able to, like, fluently speak a language anyway. So I was like, well, I usefully speak Chinese, and I can easily, like, at this point, pick up new words and, you know, remember them for a while, long enough to hold a conversation and figure out something. And, like, that's a fantastic level for this skill for me. But the linguistics courses, the sorts of questions that they were answering, and kind of just assuming that everybody had this question. These are really weird questions. Like, who would think that? What the hell is wrong with you? And I came to realize a little ways into it that the reason people would think that is because they're monolingual. And coming from a very European philosophical tradition, which is basically the European philosophical traditions are all just variations on solipsism jostling for. So which is the correct solipsism? Yours isn't right, mine is right. Which is just beautifully ironic. Right? In the Bertrand Russell denial of solipsism sense, it's just there's when you perceive European philosophical history in that vein, it's just hilariously beautiful. It's a caricature of itself at every stage. It's amazing. Um, yeah, so it's basically that. Like, oh, you guys are stupid. That that explains everything. Like I had a course in computational linguistics where what did we use? We used Prolog. The whole course we were programming in Prolog, which is it's a ridiculous programming language. Um, and there was some point where I asked the instructor something about why hasn't anybody, or has anybody that you know of, tried to make a program that can just learn a language instead of having to like write all the fucking rules by hand? Has anybody ever tried making one that can actually just learn a language? Which up to this point I thought was the entire purpose of like XBAR and government and binding and the minimalist program. I felt like that's the whole point of all of this is to build like a rough like operating system which you could more or less put into a machine and it would then be able to acquire a language. Like it appeared to me that the questions that they were attempting to answer were along these lines, like this is what you're trying to do. This is the end goal of the things that you're doing. But he was just like absolutely baffled by this question. He's like, oh, I've never even heard anybody ask this question before. And I'm like, what? Isn't this what you're doing? Isn't this what you're attempting to achieve? What? And I was just absolutely puzzled by this. Like, this guy is not a dumb guy, you know? He's probably smarter than me. Perfectly intelligent man. But I don't know, for whatever reason, just never put that together. That the whole thing we should be trying to do is build a program, a machine that can learn a language from the start without us writing the rules for it. It just baffled me. I'm like, what? How are you my instructor? What is happening here? What is this Twilight Zone shit? I just felt really weird, like it was a very Twilight Zone sort of feeling. For like the entire rest of my time in the degree program, I couldn't shake this feeling now with every instructor, because I would ask them some simple question like this, and they would just give some like bizarre answer that seemed completely incommensurate with what I perceived to be the entire goal of the entire thing all along. So yeah, like this just kind of like shook my confidence that these guys had any clue what they were doing, right? The sorts of questions they're asking only make sense if you're monolingual. The and they don't appear to be striving for anything that makes sense relative to what they're claiming that they're doing, right? Because the whole generative thing, the whole universal grammar, the whole Chomsky and nativist linguistics nonsense, it's making claims about language acquisition, and it's claiming to attempt to discern what the underlying mechanism that permits language acquisition and language processing is. What is that mechanism? That's the goal, is to figure that out. Take that just a tiny bit further, and well, we're trying to build a machine that can learn language. That's obviously the next step to this. But no, nobody had made that, as far as this guy was concerned, and he was the instructor of the entire computational linguistics like branch at the. He'd never even considered this possibility before, let alone heard of it. So it's like, what? And then so I tried to be, whatever, as respectful as possible. Like, okay, just go through these guys' courses, do the coursework, and I found it ridiculously easy for the most part. Like I said, I got a 4.0. And I took almost every linguistics course that they offered. So part of the reason I had a 4.0 was because I was taking like 21 credits a semester or something like that. Like, I was maxed out most semesters, taking as many credits as possible. Um, Part of that was because of the way that they build it, but another part of it is because of the way I knew I could handle it. Because these are not tough courses. I can take a shit ton of credits, and it's going to be easy. I'm still going to be able to get drunk in the middle of the day every single day. Like, this is easy. Right? I mean, I came from a background of, like relatively advanced mathematics and physics, so this is a cakewalk. So yeah, I had my pick of which courses to include, but there were some core courses you had to have, and I aced all of those, no problem. And pretty much every other ling course that I took. There was one actually, Intro to Linguistics, where I think I took it over the summer, and the teacher kept all of the other students kept like having issues, so she kept giving extra credit. But as a rule, she had to give the extra credit to make it available to absolutely everybody in the course. So I would do all of the coursework perfectly, and I did all of the extra credit perfectly. So I ended up with like 140% in the class. And she's like, I can't give you this grade, especially considering the fact that you're the only person who did the extra credit. So, like, the next highest grade after you is like an 80%. Do you mind just taking 100 just getting a perfect score, and we'll call it a day. And I was like, that's funny as hell. Yeah, that's fine. Like, so another aspect to my experience with linguists is uh, my my peers, right? So all throughout, uh, pretty much every course, nobody outperformed me, and my professors can attest to this. Like, nobody outperformed me. There might have been a couple times where people sort of like matched me, but nobody outperformed me. And by and large, most of the students were struggling like crazy, right? So my perception is these courses are so easy, and still the people that take them are failing. So the people that are attracted to linguistics are complete idiots. This is a degree for stupid people. That's my perception of it, because that's what I saw. Course after course after course after course. Every single course I took, which was nearly all of the courses offered at a university that has at the time, a relatively prestigious linguistics program, every single course was just chock full of students that could barely grasp what I considered to be elementary content. So my conclusion from this is the professors are dumb, the people taking this stuff are dumb. This is a field for stupid people, right? And that's an earned, justified conclusion from my experience. You can call it anecdotal, but you know what? At this point in my life, at this point now, since then, I have talked to and worked with linguists all over the world. And this view actually only got stronger. My confidence in this view actually only increased. Right? So, watching this, I'm like, this is amazing. You have an entire field of science run by idiots. And at best, the ones who aren't idiots are complicit to the stupid shit that the idiots are doing. So it's either you're stupid or you're a liar. Take your pick. Take your pick, but those are the only two options. Right? Because you're regularly saying things that are not true. You can, if you actually go out and take any measurement, you're going to see that this is obviously nonsense. Like claim after claim after claim after claim. Most of them are just garbage, just nonsense. Right? So this really caused internal problems for my my sense of how science operated. Like for a long time, I did the classic, like, oh, a good scientist would do this, and you know, whatever. So, oh, this guy's not a good scientist because he's not, you know. And then eventually, I just kind of like cracked under the pressure, and I was like, wait, they're perfectly fine scientists, because science isn't about the truth. They're getting paid to publish. They're getting paid to basically kind of like keep the cogs turning on the machine. It doesn't matter where the machine is going, or if it's making any progress at all. We can go backwards. We can go sideways. We can go... It doesn't matter what... As long as the machine is moving, as long as funds keep coming, as long as the people who are paying for this are happy with the results, that's all that actually matters. It's an industry, and the product is publication. So, all of these people that I had been attempting to dismiss as not great scientists, suddenly my views started shifting in the opposite direction. I'm like, wait, no, actually they are. And once that started happening, I started looking back at my experiences in other sciences, right? Because I do have some history with physics, and I do have some history with some other branches of science. And there was a period where one of my sources of income was editing um, papers that were going to be submitted for peer review. So that just kind of gave me a random ass cross section of science, and it became really obvious that this same sort of apparent incompetence was widespread through all of the sciences. It wasn't a problem with linguistics specifically. It wasn't a problem with the soft sciences specifically. It was. I'm not even sure that, as far as the system is concerned, it's a problem at all, right? Because the entire point is to publish. So, if your mentor said stupid shit, it's bad form for you to fix it. What is good form is to take that stupid shit and expand upon it. That's good form. Because you want to pay homage to your mentors and you want to further this whatever. It's progress. The idea is progress, right? Like, as previously noted, this bullshit concept of progress, right? Where it's really just change for the sake of change. So yeah, and then I had some more experiences, much more direct experiences later on. I started talking to, after 6 or so years or something of not talking to him, I posed a question to my former syntax teacher, who up to this point I knew I disagreed with, but I still pretty much respected him. Yeah, after this conversation, I lost all respect for him. He said some ridiculous things. That's just the whole video on its own. Yeah. And then I started actually, because I wanted to vindicate these guys, right? I didn't want them to be villains, in or anything like that in this new conception of how things work. I wanted to see them as perfectly fine, good, normal people, and I do. Ultimately, I still do. But in order to do that, I had to abandon my blind acceptance that science is about rigor and truth. It's because it's not. It's not. If you want science to be about that, then there are a ludicrous number of paradoxes. And when there's paradoxes, it means you're wrong. So, yeah. Abandon that, and the paradoxes resolve themselves. All of them do. They all resolve. And it's amazing. And you can look like, wow, that dude is saying some really stupid shit, but he's a perfectly fine scientist. He's well liked by his peers. His publications get all sorts of attention, and he's good scientist as far as the industry is concerned. He's good at his job. That's because that's what it's about, right? Yeah. So then there was some working on a team of PhD students that one of the guys that was mentored by my syntax teacher put together. Did that sentence make sense? I don't know. Yeah, so this guy was kind of heading this team of PhD students, and based on some things that I said to him in an email about his ideas, he invited me to join this group, right? So clearly, I'm not a baddie, right? Like, I'm able to be constructive and polite and kind and nice on the first try, right? And I was a part of this group for a while, and very early on, it occurred to me that the question that they're asking is not a valid question, and the thing that they're trying to do is not possible to do. So I actually took some time to formally prove that, with produce a mathematical proof that what they're doing can't work. And they didn't care. They weren't interested in that. What they were very interested in was whatever Noam Chomsky said about what they were doing. So I just kind of got bored of that and left. And then there was a project that I worked on with a phonology instructor, and he was much more of a functionalist. So it's not so much that I disagreed with him less, it's that he didn't really have like a framework that he was coming from, so it's harder to pinpoint disagreements, right? It's kind of like a Catholic versus an agnostic, right? Like, it's a lot easier to say, yeah, I have problems with what the Catholic is saying, because there's this whole, like, the framework of Catholicism. You're like, okay, you kind of have, there's a reference point, and you can sort of like, but with an agnostic, you don't know anything about what they believe, other than they're unsure if God exists. They could absolutely be religious. They just aren't sure if God exists. Like, that's nothing. Like, you can't work with that. That's so this kind of what was happening with this guy. And so I built this software that would basically was, as far as the respondents, the subjects of the study were concerned, they were just playing a video game, but on, like, they each had their own computer, and it was a video game that was networked between these two computers. And I did that written in a language that had no networking capabilities. So I was a little bit impressed with the fact that I was able to figure that out. That was some magic shit. And I mean, it worked, and it collected all of the data, and it managed it, and it put it into a file that Proc could read. But in the course of doing all of this, I discovered that there were some bugs in Proc's scripting language. And I later brought this up on some public forums with linguists, and repeatedly they just absolutely denied this and said that I have no idea what I'm talking about. I've been using Prot for 20 years and I never discovered any problem with it whatsoever. Well, good for you. That doesn't mean that they're not there. It just means you never found them. I found them. I found some bugs in Prot's scripting language. So, yeah. Fucking hell. So yeah, after this big project that like, this guy and his team had been working on it for several years, and basically and they were stuck at the same point for several years. And basically, as soon as I jumped in and, we knocked it out in a couple months, and bam, they were able to publish. And this project that took them years, with my assistance, they were able to just, knock it out in just a matter of a couple months. And the vast majority of that time was actually data collection. It was successful data collection. So, it's not like we were sitting there pondering things for a couple months and then quickly collected data. No, those couple months was almost exclusively data collection because I wrote this big. It was I think it was like a 200,000 line program. I wrote it in a weekend while I was drunk. Like, that's how easy this shit is to me. It's literally like I don't understand how people get paid for this and are so terrible at it. It's, as far as I can see, this shit is ludicrously simple. Um, you know, sorry if that's offensive, but it's like, um, it's like Will in Good Will Hunting, where he's just like, you have no idea how easy this is for me. This is like, it's ridiculous to me that you find this hard. That's how I feel with linguistics. Like, I get tripped up here and there, sure, but you guys get tripped up over fucking everything. How? It's not that hard. Holy shit. So yeah, after doing this big thing for him, where I didn't get anything in return, I wasn't paid, I did it on my free time, and like, if there was any sort of problem, I was there at the university within an hour or so, making it right. Like, the level of customer service that I provided, top notch, absolutely top notch. And a lot of times he would mention, "Hey, can we add this feature?" And I was like, "Oh no, that was in the original. That was in the first version. It's there. I'll show you how to use it." So like, I like anticipated all of the needs, and whenever an issue came up, it was corrected, and there was never a point where there were actually bugs in the code. The code every version was completely bug free. The only thing that really ever happened was because the language that I use doesn't handle networking, I had to invent a networking protocol, and because of the timing of that, it didn't have any way of, like, one computer had no way of knowing if the other one actually received the message in time, in a reasonable period of time. So that was not a problem that was solvable with that programming language. There was just permanently an issue there that you had to kind of assume the other computer got the message, because by the time it could send a confirmation, we needed to be somewhere else in the video game, like, because of the way that things had to be paced. So there was just an unsolvable problem. That wasn't a bug, and I actually got it working amazingly well. Right? Considering that I got it to work so reliably that it usually didn't pose a problem. Yeah, so there's that. And then a little bit after that, I asked him if he would help me with a research project. And I didn't hear from him for 6 months. And when I did, it was, "Oh, I'm sorry. President Trump's election had me so distraught that I couldn't talk to anybody." That was my last straw. Like, are you fucking kidding me? That's some bullshit. I'm done with this shit. I'm gone from this scene. Fuck you guys. That was it for me. That was the last straw.